There is a growing environmental crisis. In cities, green spaces are disappearing at an alarming rate, with a 50% decrease in garden habitats from 2013 to 2015. This loss of habitat is limiting the spaces for nature to exist in the modern city and has left 15% of all species now facing extinction. At the same time, exposure to nature is now being seen as a possible counter to serious mental health issues. So if nature is good for us, why is it being allowed to disappear from our cities? And what can we do to help? To get a clearer understanding of what is currently being done in the city, I worked with several different wildlife groups. From this, I found that those involved either work or study in the subject area, and that the current structure is not beneficial in engaging a larger audience in helping wildlife. What if there was a way to engage those less associated with wildlife groups? To open up the subject of wildlife and preserving green space to a wider public audience? To not only improve the presence of wildlife in the city, but also to improve the lives of the people living in it. I propose Flutter Bye, a campaign that encourages those outside of traditional wildlife groups to pursue environmental causes that they care about through exciting and engaging activities that are catering to their specific situation. But before going any further, I should show you how I got to this point.
An unprecedented decline
of British wildlife being lost before our eyes.
More species decreasing, more things disappearing, so the net impact is we're seeing
the decline of our species.
It's no secret that wildlife is disappearing. A quick Google search reveals shocking statistics about how many species are extinct and how many football fields of rainforest are destroyed every day. But this sort of information, while important, makes people feel helpless and presents the loss of wildlife as a distant issue. For initial research, I looked at existing information regarding the loss of wildlife in cities, the connection it has to our health, and what is currently being done to improve wildlife in our cities. What I found was a huge variety of information revealing the complexity of the natural world and the tangled mess we have put it through. I knew that if I was to communicate this issue, I was going to have to focus on issues that individuals can have an impact on. To do this, I had to give the project a face, to represent wildlife through a single symbol. Butterflies are seen as indicators of biodiversity. This means that if butterflies are seen to be thriving in an environment, it implies that the space as a whole is thriving. Their fragility makes them quick to react to change, making their struggle to survive in urban areas a clear warning of the damages that are being done to our environment. Their fragility, as well as their importance as indicators, makes them a relevant symbol for this project. From my secondary research, I identified clear issues facing wildlife in the city, and how it impacts both wildlife and people. I wanted to bring my observation to the public, to gain a broader sense of what people think about wildlife in the city, why they think it's disappearing, and if they feel that wildlife matters to them. To do this, I created a series of origami butterflies and presented them in the meadows. I asked people to open up the butterflies and answer the questions inside. When asked about what's causing butterflies to vanish from cities, people responded with large-scale issues such as global warming and climate change. Very little is mentioned of small-scale action which can be acted on by individuals. In response to a question of the importance of butterflies, people responded in a wide variety of ways, ranging from their importance as pollinators to associations of childhood summers. Finally, when asked about how nature in the city makes you feel, it was made clear that people do see wildlife in the city as something that is very important to them, highlighting that people do care about wildlife and want to make a difference, but may not be suited to current wildlife projects. From this research, 3 core points stood out to me. There is a need to communicate small-scale environmental steps that uplift people. Almost everyone has a connection to wildlife, and there is a need to make wildlife activities more accessible to the general public, so that everyone has the opportunity to get involved. After completing my intervention, I got in touch with the Butterfly Conservation, a wildlife organisation preserving the presence of insect life. From creating a wildlife meadow with them, I found that everyone who was volunteering was either working or studying the subject of wildlife, or they were retired and had the time to commit to these voluntary projects. For me, this raised the question, what can be done to bring outsiders into the space of wildlife preservation? Moving forward, I wanted to explore ways of engaging those interested in wildlife who don't have the time to commit themselves to large-scale green projects. As the project began to develop past the research stage, I started looking at methods of visualizing the project. So to do this, I chose to visualize my artifacts as IKEA products, addressing the loss of wildlife in an environment that everybody has experienced. The first object I created was the frame. An image that is forever connected to the butterfly is the butterfly collector. I wanted to take the visual of the typical butterfly collection cabinet and turn it into a message of wildlife loss, beyond its original connotations. The paint surrounding the clear silhouette represents the pollution of cities that has caused the species to disappear. Leaving these clear silhouettes presents an unusual image that shows that there was once something here that can now no longer sustain itself. Moving on from there, I created the plant pot. The pot was created to address the issues of pesticides and paving in gardens. Each petal holds a fact or a message reflecting the loss of wildlife in gardens, in pursuit of a perfect looking garden built around the destruction of real nature. The last to be created was the concrete box. Created by hand, the box focuses directly on the issues of paving in gardens and in city green spaces. It also represents a change in direction, as up until this point my artifacts had been bold statements with no reflection of positive forward movement, opting for the display of negative information to engage my audience. The box contained a positive message with the flower rising through the concrete, as well as a statement of loss with the message on the lid. From creating this series of artifacts, I began to focus my idea on specific themes. I knew that I wanted to project a positive and personal message, not only on the loss of wildlife, but also on the subject of what can be done to help it. At the same time as I was developing these artifacts, I was working alongside Borough Beautiful, an environmental group based in Linlithgow. Through them, I maintained my own public garden space. I found this activity to be almost therapeutic, as I was able to relax from outside pressures, and it was providing me with an activity where I was actively helping not just myself but the community and the wildlife in the area, all while having a very limited knowledge of flowers, species and wildlife. This feeling was something that I wanted to bring into my project, to engage those outside of wildlife groups with a similar experience to my own. But I also faced the issue of making this possible in the city, a place where green space is very limited and people may not have the same amount of time to commit to a green space far from their home. I wanted to bring this green space into the home or onto the windowsill. That's where Flutter Bye comes in. Flutter Bye looks to engage people with wildlife from a new angle by building on small environmental steps to push forward a new approach to wildlife preservation and the social groups that surround it. This is done by focusing on specific groups of people who may feel left out by the structure of traditional wildlife projects. This includes those who are working, those with young families, and those without access to a garden. To communicate this to the public, the campaign is centred around a window box kit, with each of the kits targeting one of these groups and having its own identity. To display the contents, I've chosen to show the family kit. The box includes a variety of different content, some designed specifically for either kids or parents, while most of the content is designed to be used as a family. This includes a book of activities. These activities are designed to encourage engaging ways of helping and sharing wildlife with others, from a family perspective. The activities range from creating your own butterfly display, to scatter seeds and raise awareness, to identifying and spotting wildlife, teaching kids about different animal and plant species. An origami butterfly, designed to be displayed from a window to allow those involved with the campaign to share their environmental actions with others. A collection of fabric butterflies, packed with seeds, to display in a public space. Families are encouraged to place these biodegradable butterflies in public spaces to not only spread seeds, but to share environmental messages that may inspire others to get involved. A series of Flutter Bye posters, designed as an engaging visual. The posters also display information on different plant and animal species. A variety of gardening equipment, as well as badges and pins. We would like to see Flutter Bye as a symbol of environmental inclusivity, and we want those involved to feel that they are part of something that is bigger than themselves. And finally, there is a packet of seeds that can be grown in the box once it's been emptied. Through this, we want to encourage adding an element of the outdoors to the centre of the family structure, as well as showing the role that nature can have even in the home. Flutter Bye is centred around the protection and preservation of wildlife, so the production process must take this into account. Each kit will be constructed from FSC wood. FSC is an environmental organisation that runs a global forest certification system, making sure that more trees are planted than the amount that they use, creating an environmentally friendly cycle of production. From there, we want to work with a variety of local volunteering groups to assemble the kits. From the beginning, the kits were designed to be easily constructed to make them easy to manufacture and assemble. Once they're assembled, there's a need to establish a connection between the kit and the audience. To do this, we want to work with local businesses within cities. Local businesses make up the heart of the city community. Every area of a city has its own identity, made up of independent and unique shops. We would like to work with these shops to distribute our kits, to extend the presence of Flutter Bye as a local project that sees the work of local businesses as having the same morals and values as ourselves. While the campaign is largely focused around the kit, there is also an opportunity to engage a larger public audience through bringing Flutter Bye into the city. We would like to see Flutter Bye addressing environmental issues in cities through a variety of different visual communication, ranging from guerrilla marketing to environmental displays. Beyond the presence of the kit, we want Flutter Bye to function as a stepping stone for connecting the target groups with wildlife preservation activities and organisations. To do this, we would like to work with existing wildlife organisations. These local organisations would submit their own activities and challenges for each of the Flutter Bye focus groups, giving those involved with Flutter Bye the opportunity to take part in further localised wildlife activities that are appropriate for their environment. These activities would range from home activities to group events with others who are involved with the project, establishing personal connections with others with similar interests. From proposing this to the wildlife groups I worked with, they saw this as an interesting and productive way to break down barriers and for encouraging more people to help and become involved in wildlife preservation. Flutter Bye presents an engaging and inclusive experience connecting to core issues of wildlife loss in cities. Through exploring environmental issues, gaining public perspectives, and working with existing projects, I've been able to identify a range of issues impacting the accessibility of wildlife groups, allowing me to create a productive and inclusive project that looks to help tackle some of these issues. While environmental issues are too large for one person or one project to fully tackle, there is always a need to address small-scale environmental action by encouraging active engagement from people who may otherwise feel ignored by environmental groups. Flutter Bye presents an opportunity for those who may feel excluded to be a part of something bigger than themselves, building environmental action around their specific situation, while also presenting them with a network of environmental connections, providing them with a strong framework to build from, to not only benefit themselves both physically and mentally, but also the environment that surrounds them, and therefore the wildlife that inhabits the space around them.